And Ben Carson is defending his own life story after reports dispute his autobiography. One America's Cameron Kramer examines claims made by some members of the media and shows how a historical fact check can shine light on Carson's claims.
Ben Carson has made many headlines in recent days, but they're not about his health care plan, economic ideas, stance on the Second Amendment, or education reform. Instead, they're scrutinizing events that happened 40-plus years ago to a teenaged Carson. This was the headline from a Politico article on Friday. The piece slams the 2016 candidate over scholarship offer claims made in his book, Gifted Hands. Here's how Carson's account appears in his 1992 autobiography. In the text, Carson describes participating in a Memorial Day 1969 parade as an ROTC student. In the same paragraph, he talks about meeting General William Westmoreland at a dinner event. Politico and others pointed out Westmoreland's event schedule from that year, which was archived at an Army museum. Indeed, the general wasn't in Detroit on Memorial Day 1969. He was in Washington, D.C. But Westmoreland's schedule goes on to confirm that he had been in the Motor City in February of that year for a dinner event honoring a Vietnam War veteran. In fact, the dinner was for Dwight Johnson, the Congressional Medal of Honor winner Carson notes in his autobiography. Carson was in attendance, like Westmoreland, for that event in February, so in theory a conversation between the two could certainly have taken place. And about that conversation, here's how Carson described it just last month.
I was offered a full scholarship to West Point, got to meet General Westmoreland, go to Congressional Medal of Honor dinners, but decided really my pathway would be medicine.
Notice he never uses the phrase accepted when discussing a potential offer for a scholarship at West Point. It's the same narrative as he wrote back in 1992. Nevertheless, this is the point where Politico's story veers, the original article claiming, quote, that a central point in his inspirational personal story was fabricated, his application and acceptance into the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. However, you can't read that story anymore. Politico revised it, even altering the title to remove the word fabricate to now read, Carson claimed West Point's scholarship but never applied. The story states that Carson conceded that he never applied nor was granted admission to West Point. But even using the verb concede is misleading, because in his book 23 years ago, Carson plainly laid out that he was merely offered a potential scholarship and chose not to pursue it. However, even with the application and admission problems seemingly solved, the media kept up its pursuit of Carson, this time for his use of the term scholarship when discussing West Point.
Well, for example, when you started out talking about a scholarship to West Point, there are no scholarships to West Point. You went on to clarify the actual situation.
Wait a minute, George. Now, go look on the West Point website, and you'll see those specific words, scholarship, full scholarship to West Point. So even though it is, given as a grant for anybody who gets in, those words are used.
So how does this statement stack up? On its official admission page, West Point does not use the phrase full scholarship. Instead, those who are selected to attend the United States Military Academy receive tuition, room and board, and expenses fully paid. Though that essentially sounds like a scholarship, the phrase is not used. However, on its diversity outreach page, West Point does use the word. What's more, a 2012 student prospectus also uses the phrasing. But the use of the word dates back to when Carson would have been applying to college. A full-page advertisement for West Point uses the word full scholarship, while a 1966 issue of Ebony magazine specifies cadets receive a 4-year scholarship. Those examples not only argue against George Stephanopoulos' point, but Politico's assertion that according to West Point, there's no such thing as a full scholarship. But perhaps most important is the point raised by the RNC chairman.
I mean, I would imagine some questions are appropriate, but I do believe that this is a totally a crazy obsession over incredible detail from 30 and 40 years ago.
In an election season heating up every day, should the focus be on policy and presidential ambitions or personal details documented decades ago? Cameron Kramer, One America News.